I hope you're having a good All Saints Day. Does social media make much of All Saints Day? I imagine not.
I think people are still recovering from Halloween.
Yeah, that's it. All
Halloween
Hallows Eve. Yes. Go. I'm just going to send a little reminder email.
How was your birthday weekend, Sean?
Fantastic. I turned 40. My knees are feeling it, but had a fun day on Friday. It was my birthday, relaxing, nice time with family and friends. And then my daughter, it was her second Halloween. So this time we actually got to take her around for trick-or-treating. I will have some pictures to share here at the beginning of the program for our audience. She went as two different things, couldn't make up her mind. So she did a skeleton ballerina and a construction worker.
Really two ends of the spectrum. I love it.
Both of those.
Yeah.
I love both those things. That is so great. So this is her first Halloween, like getting dressed up.
Well, for her first Halloween, she was 10 months old and her name is Avi. And we thought it'd be really cute if she was an avocado. So her first Halloween, she had an avocado outfit.
That
is
cute.
It was adorable.
That is so cute.
So you're going to share pictures once we let everybody in from the waiting room, right?
Definitely.
Let's let them in. Hello and good evening, everyone. Happy All Saints Day. I am Todd, and this is the VBC Happy Hour. This is the Veterans Breakfast Club, and I'm the Executive Director, Todd DiPastino, and we hold these veteran storytelling programs online and sometimes in person here in the Pittsburgh area. And tonight, I'm so, this is going to be one of the, our tagline is kind of like that veteran stories heal, connect, educate, and inspire. That last one, I think, is the one that's really going to hit for me tonight because we have Kim DeFiori with us. Hello, Kim. How are you, Captain? And then we have Jennifer Hobbs with us, and both of them have written, well, hey, Jennifer, good to see you. Both of them have written inspiring stories and courageous stories. And I kind of want to ask, as we get into the conversation, what in the world gave you the courage to write?
Hey, Todd.
Hello, Ursula.
Todd,
how are you?
It's Ursula. I'm going to put Homer on, okay? I'm going back upstairs, but I have Homer on.
All right. Thank you, Ursula. This is so great. We have Homer Craig on, who served in Germany in the 1960s, where he met Ursula. He approached her. Let's just say they fell in love. They got married. They've been married 58 years. And so Homer, we haven't been able to get Homer on for quite a while. So it's good that he'll be on with us, and hopefully he'll share some of his stories too. So I was just going to say these stories are inspiring by Kim and Jennifer, and I'm very excited to get to the stories and also to ask them where does the courage come from to to be so candid about your personal struggles. I think it takes a tremendous amount of courage, and we depend on people like you to do that, to help us, guide us in our own journeys through life. I want to welcome Sean Hall. He's our Director of Programming. Hello, Sean.
Hello.
Sean is the host of the Scuttlebutt podcast, Understanding Military Culture, which comes out every Monday, which means it comes out today. Sean, what's up with the Scuttlebutt today?
We only have 3 more episodes left in this season, but this episode that was released today finishes up a series about the Forever Wars. We interviewed Murtaza Hanapur from Afghanistan. He now lives in the United States. He was an interpreter for the Americans, got through this SIV program, now lives on the West Coast. We had a very interesting conversation with him about him growing up in Afghanistan, how he became involved with working with the Americans, how he got over to America, what he thinks about that. Really interesting and great conversation with him. Catherine Guyon, who has joined me multiple times as a co-host, joined me for this one. And we were really blown away by his story. So you can check that out. Ellie's going to put it over here in the chat, the link. You can listen to it at any time on our website or on YouTube, but you can also listen to it whenever you want if you download it wherever you get your podcast. And it's always nice if you ring the bell, give us a review. We always appreciate the positive feedback or constructive feedback if you'd like.
Now, Sean, you have a 22-month-old daughter, correct? Avi.
I do.
And so last night, Halloween, it's starting to be like a big holiday in Avi's young life. Did she go trick-or-treating?
She did. She went as two things because she's very opinionated and she had choices, and she chose to go as, I'll show a picture here to just destroy everyone with cuteness. Looked like a little ballerina skeleton. She has a little tutu here. And not only to be outdone by that, she had the other option of going as a construction worker, which she loves for whatever reason, loves construction vehicles. And we were out and about. It took us an hour to get around one block. She was taking it all in. She got a good haul of candy and had a really great time. And somebody gave her a wand at the very end of the trip, which lights up, and she was so excited for.
Oh, that is so great.
Yeah.
A skeleton ballerina. You know, I might actually attend the ballet if there are guaranteed skeleton ballerinas in the
She might be a trend center. Here we go.
Well, thank you very much, Sean. And I know that we have some other people here who are new to the Veterans Breakfast Club and some others who have things to announce. And let's go to Eric Orient first. Hello, Eric. You and I met a couple years ago at a VBC evening event at a brew pub here in Pittsburgh. Thank you for joining us. You live in State College, PA?
That's correct. Thanks, Todd. I appreciate the invite, and I'll be quick. So, yes, I was born in Pittsburgh, lived there for a while, joined the military, moved around, ended up back in Pittsburgh, but now I've since moved to State College and hang my hat here. But my announcement tonight is on the screen there. I work for UPMC Health Plan, and just a few weeks ago, I pitched to some of my bosses at UPMC that they really ought to get behind veteran hiring initiatives for veterans, their spouses, their partners, really anyone in that support network for veterans. And the folks said yes, and they wanted to do it. So they've agreed to put on a hiring event specific for veterans in their support network at Heinz Field on November 18th from 4 to 8 p.m. I'll be there. I'll have recruiters and managers who have real opportunities. And I'm having my ask here to this group is that if you know a veteran, or you are one who's looking for a job, or you know a veteran whose spouse is, please pass the word. You can use my email address. I'll put it in the chat, but it's oriente@upmc.edu. And if anyone wants more information, I'll get it to them, and I'd love to see them there. So Todd, thanks for the moment to say that.
Eric, why don't you put the flyer in the chat also so people could download it and get the information on the event? You're a senior project manager at UPMC Health Plan, which is University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, for those of you who aren't from the Pittsburgh area, health plan. And you're also a veteran. You're an Army veteran, correct?
No, Marines, 22 years.
Okay, Marines, 22 years. I didn't realize that. Your father was Army, Joe. That's right. Orient, correct?
Yes, my dad was first Cav in 66. He was in Vietnam, and then my grandfather, I know was I think it was 3rd Armored, but he was an Army vet as well.
And I know that your dad would come to our breakfast. He passed away a couple years ago, but He would come to our breakfast, talk about his service in Vietnam, and also talk about the LST, the landing ship tank, which I think he either rode on or his father rode on. I can't quite remember his relationship to it, but he would wax poetic about the LST. And what I want to ask you, Eric, is he did not try to convince you to stay out of the Marine Corps?
No, my father suggested that I talk to all the services because I didn't want to go to college. I wasn't ready. And he said, why don't you go talk to the recruiters? And so I thought everyone in the Air Force was a pilot. I had no idea. I thought my dad was a captain in the Army, and it was really a Spec 4. But I talked to all the recruiters except for the Air Force. And the Marine recruiter had biceps that were like that big, and I thought that would be me. So I joined the Marines.
Very good. And
It
where
didn't
did
work.
you, when was that? Where did you go with the Marine Corps?
I went in August of 1991, and I went to my recruiting station was in Washington, PA.
Whoa. So you were a recruiter for how long?
No, I was not a recruiter, but I got recruited out of that office.
You got recruited out of that office.
Yeah.
Then
Then I had a mix of officer and enlisted time, so staff sergeant, and then I got commissioned and retired as a major ultimately.
Wonderful. Have you told your story, recorded your story, written your story at all?
You know, I wrote something just after I got back from Afghanistan, and it was about my unit's experiences in Afghanistan. And I just reread it maybe 2 months ago, and it brought back so many memories. So I wrote it down, but I haven't shared it with too many people.
I'm so glad that you wrote it down, because you think you're going to remember it forever and you don't. You know,
It brought back a lot of memories. In fact, I'll try and point to him. The guy that's a shadow box up there,
Yep.
top of my screen. There's the U.S. SEAL that I took from the embassy in Afghanistan, and the guy who's in the shadow box at the top left, it's John Eatman. He was my platoon sergeant there, and he got killed. I have that up so that I can remember some of those folks. Those are the guys on the wall behind me. Is some of the folks that didn't come back, but they're all great fellas, and those are great memories too. Sad but great.
yeah, right. Eric, please join us again sometime and share more of your story anytime, or whenever you have initiatives going on at UPMC that you want to share. You'd be very welcome to
Will
join
do.
us.
Thanks, Todd.
Anytime. Thank you so much. I see
Okay.
Sue Watson is with us with Veterans Helping Veterans. Hello, Sue. I know that you've been very busy and you have something coming up this month also. Do you care to share about it? I have a slide here that has some details.
Sure. I'll just say real quickly, we're about a year and a half in. We're a doors open place to come in, get coffee, camaraderie, care, and then connection to all sorts of veteran service organizations. I said at an event this weekend, in most VSOs, when you walk in, they say, do you have an appointment? And when you walk into Veterans Helping Veterans, I say, what would you like in your coffee? So it's a casual sort of care place, but we have an open house coming up. Our doors are always open, but we thought it was actually requested, that we do an open house. So Friday, November 19th, 9:30 to 2 o'clock. So we'll be regular operation, but it would just be a time for veterans and friends and families and VSOs and community people to come in and see what we're all about, get some breakfast or get some lunch and get some coffee.
So that'll be the Friday before Thanksgiving in Homestead in Western PA. And it is the building right across the street from the police station in Homestead. Correct?
Yes. Thank
Wonderful.
you. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yes.
And I know that there are people on the program who also would love to know, how is your dad doing? Your dad, Jack Watson, who's a legend, certainly a legend here with the Veterans Breakfast Club, Iwo Jima Marine, has shared his story with us. How's he been?
He's okay. We're going to try to get him on again now that we're, Zooming in happy hour. I'll have to go in and help him. He's on some pain management, which is really good. Physically, he's not getting around, anywhere near where he was before, but mentally he's, pretty sharp, still jovial. And, he and my mom are back together. They had been separated for about 10 months just because of COVID restrictions. So, every day they bring joy to each other and joy to me. So it's a blessing. Thank you for asking.
Such a sharp, smart person, such a fascinating person. Thank you, Sue. Hey, I see Lois Lieberman. Hello, Lois. How are you? I met Lois at a Beachview event. How are you, Lois?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm just getting myself unmuted here. So yes, that's right. We did meet in Beachview at the Veterans Breakfast, and it was a real pleasure to hear you speak with the various people at the Veterans Breakfast who you could get them to elicit their information about their experiences. And the one I recall is the one where it was a rainy day when we were in Beachview, and you had indicated to one fellow, it is a rainy day today in Beachview, but I'm sure that you being in the service, you had much more weather problems than you're having here right now. And I remember him responding and saying, "Oh yes, I did. 50 feet high waves in the water in the Atlantic, and I had to tie myself into my bed so that I wouldn't roll out." So you have an excellent way of eliciting.
I do have an excellent way of eliciting stories from veterans. And, I mean, the step one is shove a microphone in their face. And step two is if you know that they're in the Navy or the Coast Guard, just ask them, did you ever have any bad weather on board ship? And it's like they cannot help but start talking about it, because of course, what are you, an idiot? Of course, 50-foot waves, you couldn't believe 70-mile-an-hour wind, wind. It's just, it's so fascinating to me that the experiences of veterans, the experiences in the military are so extreme often, that if you just ask a simple question about some of the more extreme events that they've experienced, it's like they cannot help but talk about it because it's so memorable. But anyhow, Lois, you're joining us because you introduced me virtually to this wonderful animal named Hondo, who is now in West Virginia, correct?
That's correct.
And Hondo needs a home.
That's correct. Hondo is, I'm in Pittsburgh, first of all, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I live in Squirrel Hill, and I had volunteered at Animal Advocates, which is at the West End, for several years. And I still keep in touch with people at the West End, and I'm on their distribution list whenever they're sharing information about animals that need foster homes or forever homes. And so this one dog, Hondo, came in on my screen. And so Hondo, from what I understand, was taken to the shelter by his owner and just given to the shelter. And it's a low trafficked area. So Hondo has been there maybe a quarter of a year, 3-4 months, and no one has has any interest in him. So I've been trying to get him exposed to different people so that someone would realize that he is a valuable dog. So that's basically what I know about him, and that Animal Advocates usually works with these low trafficked shelters. And that's how I know about Hondo, because Animal Advocates continually makes arrangements to know about dogs that are in need and dogs that are worthy of being adopted.
Look at that horrible, sad body language there that Hondo is expressing. 3-year-old Hondo is a big, sturdy boy. He has lived with other dogs, but he should be an only dog and no cats. He is a total sweetheart with people once he's comfortable with them. He's frightened and depressed. He is shutting down and giving up hope. He could use adopting. And so we just thought we'd, put out the word if people are interested in adopting Hondo. Lois, how would they, or finding out more maybe about Hondo? I know that I interrupted you, and I'm sorry about that.
Oh, that's fine. But there, I think there are a few video clips of Hondo. There were about 5 video clips that the shelter had shared, and so I'm not sure you have. Do you have them?
I never received them.
Oh, well, they do show Hondo interacting with a cat, and so there is no problem with cats. And I saw in the snippet of videos that it does interact with, there was another dog in the room too, and he was interacting with that dog. And he was seen, and he really was very inquisitive with the handler, and he put his paws up on there. He's almost up to the waist, maybe the thigh of the person who was handling him with a leash. And the dog just went up on his leg and just more or less petted him. He wasn't anything more than that. So it appears that Hondo is more adaptable to people and cats and another dog. But because he's been at this shelter, he has been disoriented because it's just been sad to see some of those photos. If you didn't get those photos, I'm not sure I can access them from here.
I was just going to say, we can put the link if they're on the internet somewhere on the Animal Advocates website. Maybe we could share the link here in the chat and people could watch them on their own. All right.
Yes. That would be good. It is on their link. They sent me another email about it.
Okay, then Lois, your job, if you wouldn't mind taking this on, would be to take that email, find the link, and then share it in the chat here on the Zoom side, and then we'll share it on social media, and we'll try to help find a new home for Hondo. I'm such a dog lover, as is my daughter Ellie. We're like this close to to getting Hondo in our house.
Oh,
My wife would kill me though. So so thank you very much, Lois. And let's share that link as widely as we can.
This will take me a little bit of effort to do this, so I've got to disappear, and then hopefully I can get this done.
Okay, thank you, Lois. I appreciate that. And take your time. We've got another hour or so to talk with Kim and Jennifer Hobbs. Kim and Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us. I guess I could give you a bit of an introduction. Let me start here. I want to find here's both the books that I want to show you, the book covers, because I have a question about one of the book covers here. Kim and Jennifer are the authors of these two books, respectively: Lessons from Thor, Healing with Service Dog's Touch, and then Jennifer is the author of Calmed: Growth After Trauma. Kim was a very superb swimmer in high school from Kingswood, I believe, Texas, near Houston. She was recruited by Division I universities and turned them all down to go to the United States Military Academy at West Point. This is in 2004, I believe. She graduated, and during her 4 years there, I've read 59 graduates from West Point were killed. 59 during those 4 years when she attended. She went to Afghanistan and served there in 2010, experienced all the, many of the horrors of war, and came back a changed person. And she wrote this wonderful book talking about the long road back that she had to face, to kind of reintegrating. And I think that's a perfect word for it, reintegrating as a human being. Jennifer is much the same kind of story. Joined the Illinois National Guard at age 17, served in the 1544th Transportation Company, which has, Jennifer, it has a really interesting history, which I never knew, going back to the Civil War. Leo West remembers it. Don't you, Leo?
Yeah.
And served in Iraq, saw a lot of combat in her transportation company, fell in love with Ryan, who was also in her company. Ryan was badly wounded on October 6th, 2004. And a lot of Calmed is a dual memoir of her memoir and her husband's memoir, how they kind of came back from the war and had to really struggle to find themselves and each other after that. So can I start with you? First of all, I just want to welcome you both. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me start with Kim, and then I want to go to Jennifer. Kim, what made you want to go to the West Point, the military academy, rather than to, take advantage of one of these great swimming scholarships?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I would say West Point. So I was
sophomore in high school when September 11th happened. And so just watching the towers fall, and then history class, I went to school in Texas. So they would play the war just on mute as an invasion went on. And I just like repeatedly just got that calling to service to want to go serve. But I also still wanted to figure out how to lead in combat. So it was just kind of a mixture of the two, of being a leader in the community and being a leader on the swim team. And then also just having that September 11th happen in middle of high school, right before you're really diving into what do you want to do when you grow up.
When you went to West Point, it must have been, this is the summer of 2004. I think you would have arrived. It's before things really got bad in Iraq. And but it was clear that this wasn't going to be a quick operation. It just must have been, you all must have been knowing that you were all going to be going to Afghanistan or Iraq, or maybe both in the future. Was there anxiety? Did you have anxiety about that? Or were you kind of, you knew that you'd be eager to go when you're ready to go?
Yeah. So our class was one of the first that, like, from day one when we applied, because you have to apply like a year in advance. So day one, when we applied, we knew we were going to war. Like, we didn't know when, we didn't know where, but we knew we were going to go to war. So we knew a peacetime was over. And so you just have a different type of cadet that applies than, say, like 10 years before that. Not saying they're any better or worse, but they just have a different mindset. And so we were all excited, but at the same time, we didn't know if the war was going to keep going. We were like, all right, maybe we'll hit the tail end of it, but hopefully we still can do our part. Right. And like at lunch, so every single time a West Point graduate is killed in action, at lunch, everybody comes together every day. It's mandatory. And you're sitting at a table of 10. If you haven't seen the mess hall at West Point, just Google a picture. It's phenomenal. But everyone is standing behind the chairs and they just say, attention to orders. On September 10th, 2006, second lieutenant, blah, 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 was struck by an IED and was killed due to wounds. Please have a moment of silence. And so you have that happen 50 times while you're at West Point. It, like, the toll of war is very much among us all the time. And like, we had two of the male swimmers get killed in action while we were there. And so like, we knew what we were getting into. We knew how heavy it was going to weigh on us. And we also just enjoyed our time there because we didn't know who wasn't going to make it, but we knew some of us wouldn't make it back. And we knew, like, everyone at our table, someone's not going to make it back from war. And just to enjoy that time we had with each other and soak up every leadership lesson we could, because we just never knew when that lesson could, like, save a life, save our platoon, or whatever the ramifications could be.
Kim, this is such a tough question to ask. If you knew then that Kim in 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, when you're at West Point, if you could have talked to her and say, Kim, this is what's going to happen to you over the next few years, would you have not gone to West Point?
There's no situation in my life I would not go to West Point unless they didn't accept me. That's the only time that I want to go. But even that, like, if I didn't get into West Point, I was ready to go to prep school for a year and then go to West Point. It was always my number one school. And I just had that deep calling. And it was just, the only thing I would tell myself would be, talk about your feelings. Like, if you have that stuff, like, talk about it before it destroys you inside. Like, feelings aren't weak, feelings aren't bad. And just because you experience something and you have feelings about it, that's what makes you human. That's the only thing I would change about myself. I would say, like you're about to break your head against that wall. So just let it crumble, go talk to people while you're along the way, and, like, get through those emotions so you can have a longer career.
I want to go to Jennifer, but before I do, what you're describing, how determined you were to go to West Point, and how you just knew it was your calling. I ran across this quotation from you, and I think the word woman doesn't necessarily have to be in there. Being a warrior means to face the world courageously and take risks to accomplish your goals, to find the energy from failures and keep striving and driving forward. I think that's a wonderful definition. Would you say that you had just the warrior spirit?
Yeah, there was nothing but just warrior in me as an older teenager and a young 20-something-year-old. Like, there was nothing that I couldn't conquer. And West Point, it was getting better, but it was very much male heavy back then. It's starting to get more diverse, but like, just, you have to act like one of the guys, you have to run as fast as the guys, you have to carry just as much, and like, you have to constantly prove yourself, because it literally takes 1 second of you failing and just saying like you're not worth it anymore. And so trying to make up for that one failure, it's just like, it takes a lot, but you got to do it. Like, you're going to fall out of a run eventually one day. And like, whether it's when you're like 40 or whether it's when you're at West Point, like, you just keep striving, you keep going. And if you have a cramp, you just drive through it. And the eyes were on us for sure, as a West Point woman, especially because I can tell you, like, so many guys, they're just like, oh yeah, I knew Kim, but I have no clue who they were, because they just are a drone of male cadets out there. But the female cadets, like, people knew who we were, and they still know us to this day.
Jennifer, you had a very different path into the military. You joined the Illinois National Guard at age 17.
Yes.
What the heck did you know at age 17?
How to spell 17. That's about it. But I did. I was interested in it just from seeing other family members that had been in it. So that kind of inspired me. And then just kind of through high school, I was already looking into it. And so as information's already coming my way, and like coming from a home where we were a low income single family home, like seeing the opportunities that it could offer me outside of following like my actual like goal and dream to be a soldier, it kind of all fell into place that, okay, this works. I can be a soldier, but I can also continue high school. I could start it early and then be ready to go to college. So I didn't necessarily, I was going to enlist regardless. And then once I found out that I could get my schooling at the same time, that's when I made the decision to join at the end of my junior year, and went to basic training the summer before my senior year. And that was 2001. So just as I returned for my senior year, I was in class when they turned on the TV and saw the Twin Towers hit. So it's so interesting to hear Kim's perspective living in Texas, how they put on like the entire broadcast of all that. I didn't have that experience. And I love hearing other people's perspectives. And actually, again, I want to follow up with what she said, that thank you for having me on here. And I'm really excited to hear more from Kim. We had the opportunity to be on another, the America's Web radio, where we were talking about things in Afghanistan, but I had no idea she wrote a book. And, like, we're all full of all these different layers, people, not just veterans, just people in general. And so I'm excited to be here, and it's interesting to hear the different stories. And that's just two people, I'm just hearing Kim's story right now. And then I have mine. But if I look around here, all these people on this call, everyone has their story, and so many different stories. And I think it's just amazing. And thank you for having me here.
You're welcome. We get a lot out of it. I mean, you veterans face, I think, in a more extreme way, and at a younger age, a lot of the grief and trauma and loss that we all experience if we live a life. We're all going to suffer damage. We're all going to suffer loss. We're all going to have things happen to us that we wish wouldn't happen to us, and that are going to change us permanently. But it tends to happen to you earlier in a very extreme, Kim goes to Afghanistan, comes home a different person. You go to Iraq, come home a different person. And I want to get to that But I don't want to forget to ask you this simple question, Jennifer, and I'm sorry, this is going to sound like it's coming out of nowhere, but I noticed in reference to your book, which is titled Calmed, that whenever I see the book's title in print, the period is there. Calmed, period.
Yes.
Growth after trauma. That had to be deliberate, right?
Yes, absolutely. I'm so glad you point that out. Absolutely. So I would love to tell you the story of where this title came from. And it's in my book. In the evening on October 6th, when my now husband was hit by a roadside bomb, I was asking him questions because as I decided to take this just from a book from one perspective, and I decided to make it a dual perspective, putting his everything from his point of view, same deployment, things of that sort. When I was asking him about the night that he was hit by a roadside bomb and what he remembers of it, and there was a lot that I remember from him telling me 17 years ago. Bright light, hot, pressure on his face, things of that sort. But as we dove into it this past year, and we were tearing open those wounds again and just kind of going to that place that's not easy to go to. He had said when he was getting on the helicopter, and after they got him out from underneath the truck that he was trapped under, I said, did you know that Sergeant Edwards, which was in the truck as well, our platoon sergeant, I said, did you know he was on the helicopter with you? And he said, no, I did not know. I didn't know, but I had this feeling that somebody was there, somebody close to me. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, because I just felt calmed. And that was so phenomenal, especially coming out of my husband's mouth, going to that place, going to those feelings, amazing.
Was he happy or excited about you saying, hey, honey, I'm going to write a dual memoir. And all you need to do is tell me your story and I'll write it for you. I can imagine.
Oh, yeah, he was so pumped. No.
That must have been a hard sell, huh?
It was definitely, it was a work in progress. I mean, the story I started to write 18 years ago after we returned, just really trying to cope. And when I had a head injury a year and a half ago, which left us both pretty, it kind of ripped open wounds of trauma that had already been there, made us both experience those, and him seeing so from that trauma, finding myself into a dark place and knowing that I needed to do something about it, I needed to do something for myself, I made the decision that I was going to get back to writing. And over about 3 or 4 months, so it wasn't fast, it wasn't overnight. And I was kind of surprised that he was reluctant but willing. And honestly, in those nights after we put our kids to sleep and we were able to have those conversations, I felt, and I still continue to feel as we continue to go there and have those uncomfortable conversations, that he finds some release in it, and that it's wow, people actually want to hear about what I went through. People actually care. After all those years of being strung around, people actually want to listen.
Yeah.
And so it's been a growth process for us separately, but also together. And it's pretty amazing.
Your unit, your transportation company from the Illinois National Guard, I looked it up and I was very surprised at the amount of material I was able to find on this little transportation company, a trucking company. You're moving things from here to there. There's a lot about it.
A lot.
There's a 12-minute, a wonderful 12. I don't know if you think it's wonderful. I thought it was very educational. 12-minute documentary on the company service in 2004. And I'm going to put the link here if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to put it here. I don't know if you've seen it, what you think about it, but I encourage people, if you want to know what Jennifer's service was like in Iraq, just watch that 12 minutes. You get a really good sense of it. Could you share about what what you were doing, what your company was doing?
Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and screenshot that because I don't know any other fancy way to do it, but I'm sure I have seen it because you're absolutely right. If you Google 1544th Transportation Company, Paris, Illinois, it was one that shook. It just shook the central Illinois because all of us were from central Illinois, and of 160 soldiers, we were deployed to right outside of Baghdad, Iraq, between Baghdad and Abu Ghraib. We were about 1,500 meters from Abu Ghraib. You can look through binoculars and see it. And we were on this very small base, all with a whole bunch of Reserve and National Guard units. And we received over 230 mortar rounds that year. And we lost 5 soldiers that year in our unit. We had 100, like I said, we had 160 people in our unit. And I have read somewhere, I was trying to fact check it before I got on here, but I have read that over 60% of our soldiers were between like 20 and 30 years old. Like, we were a lot of young pups during that year of 2004, and we lost 5, and we had 28 Purple Heart recipients. And you'll see there at the bottom of that picture on the bottom right, Sergeant Jessica Cobby. She was the soldier who was in the truck with my husband when they were hit by a roadside bomb. She was killed instantly from the blast, and everyone else on the mission just assumed, as they were hearing rumors, that the KIA was my husband because he was trapped under the truck, and he wasn't my husband at the time. But the 1544th suffered, like I said, 28 Purple Hearts that year, 5 soldiers that were lost. And then I feel like those invisible wounds, they go on forever in these other 155 people, listens, that, and then their families and their friends. And so we were mail carriers. We were truck drivers that we did not, actually, I shouldn't say we carried the mail. We were force protection. We just loaded up with as much gunpowder as we could. We were spaced out in between a convoy that was full of civilian drivers that had connexes full of mail. And we delivered them to the bases all over.
And so let's have, how about this? Could you tell us how were you allowed, you met Ryan overseas, or you knew him before you went to Iraq?
I like how at first you were like, were you allowed?
Yeah, that's kind of when I ask, is like, is that allowed? Is that, you're allowed to canoodle like that?
I mean, honestly, I've even asked people about this in the past year, like someone who's still someone who was one of my battle buddies that I served with that has like a year left. And I'm like, is that allowed? And here's what I found out. So we were the same rank, so it's not considered fraternization in that point because you are of same rank.
Okay.
However, apparently in a combat zone, none of that should be acceptable by any means. Your mission should be focused on the task at hand. I did start running my sweet game on him before we went into Iraq. So, and I mean, when it comes to a relationship in Iraq, it's like you're at the platoon meetings, like looking across the circle, like, hey, like, want to smoke a cigarette afterwards? Like it's not much. And
you're not going on a date. Yeah.
No. And he's definitely not one to like, oh, hey, let's go work out at the gym together, or like go like out in public where people are. And I wouldn't have went there. Like it just wasn't like that. And so it was just having a new friend a friend that I thought was, kind of sexy, but there's that. I'm just totally being honest, but we started to talk at the beginning of the deployment. We were in the same platoon, but it was just throughout the year we started to grow together with our conversations. And once he got hit by a roadside bomb, and the night is actually just completely wild that I speak about in my book. It's totally wild that I never, ever spent any time in the Tactical Operations Center, because I didn't have any purpose in there. You're just filling up all kinds of space. That's for the first sergeant and the communications people. Like, I have no business being in there unless I'm going to grab some supplies that were sent from families. And on that evening, one out of the 363 days, I decided to stay and keep my battle buddy company and play cards with her. And that just happened to be so random that my platoon got hit by a roadside bomb. I was right next to the radio communications when they started calling for a medevac. I'm finding out it's my platoon. I'm finding out it's the rear truck. I knew Ryan, my boyfriend at the time, is in the rear truck. And we find out someone's KIA, and it was
and not to be, I'm a writer also, so I think what I like about your book about Calmed is that it really is like a classic love story, in the sense that you fall in love and there's that drama, but then a radical crisis hits you both, and you have to kind of find each other again and find yourselves again. And I do want to get on to that story of how that happened. First, I want to go back to Kim, but before I do that, I see that we have Mr. Masters with us from Toronto, Canada. And I do want to plug a special program that we're having a week from tonight, featuring Mr. Masters and some Canadian World War II veterans. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this, Scott?
Yeah, absolutely. And I forgot to do the rename thing and put Scott Masters instead of Mr. Masters. I'm going to have to remember to fix that next time.
I say Mr. Masters because you're a teacher at the Crestwood Preparatory College in Toronto, Canada, and have a wonderful veterans history program. You really get your kids involved in interviewing veterans from all eras and ages. It's terrific. But over the years, you've made these wonderful connections with World War II veterans, and you've managed to kind of get them all to come on our program a week from tonight.
Yeah, and we did a preliminary Zoom last night, me and 4 98-year-olds on Zoom together, and it went really, really well. And they're looking forward to meeting you guys next week. So we got 2 guys from the Army, 1 from the Navy, and 1 from the Air Force. And they're from all over Canada, from British Columbia to Nova Scotia.
That is so neat. How terrific. And I think we're looking forward to it, especially because I would say that, even Americans who are very well versed in World War II don't know that much about Canada's role and how the experience differed. I think maybe Juno Beach, I think that's all that would really know. So I'm really looking forward to this. Thank you very much, Scott, for.
Yep, it's my pleasure. I'm looking forward to doing it. And I wanted to say a quick hello to Sue, because something that her father, Jack, said when we met months ago, he talked about being a proud World War II vet and not really knowing much about Canada's role. So I said I was going to have to do something about that for him. And now we're able to.
Let me take this opportunity then to ask anybody else who's on the program who wants to announce something that they have going on. We have Veterans Day coming up here. If you have something going on you want to announce or pitch, let people know about. Because I do. Do you know what the Veterans?
Well, tell them about the Vetathon.
I know I was going to do that, Ben. Thank you. Do you know what the Veterans Breakfast Club is doing for Veterans Day? Have you guys heard? We're doing a 24-hour vetathon, a Zoom vetathon. I think it's crazy. Sean came up with the idea. I told him, no way. He said, we're doing this. So Sean, we're starting at midnight on November 11th, and then we're going through to 11:59 that night.
That's true. I remember talking with Ellie. I think it was during our the Vietnam Veterans radio station, the veteran program that we did. I remember messaging Ellie and saying, "This is a crazy idea. What do you think of this?" And she said, "You're crazy." And we've decided to just go ahead with it. But I think it's going to be an awesome day, midnight to 11:59 throughout the entire day of Veterans Day, celebrating veterans, their stories, guests, hosts throughout. It was great to think of this as a 24 1-hour programs with different hosts bringing on different people from their network all across the country. In fact, around the world. We actually have some hosts coming in from Europe. Is that right?
Yep, Europe and Australia.
We got some wonderful sponsors that decided to jump on this idea. And we're just hoping that people come on at any time during the day and listen in to stories. You could come on at 3 a.m. You could come on at 6 p.m. At any point, we're just going to be on and celebrating the day.
And, and I want to just make the offer to anybody here or anybody watching that if you have a veteran you want to pay tribute to, if you have a tribute you want to give to veterans in general, if you have a song you want to sing, a dance you want to do, a poem you want to read, please, come on at some point on November 11th. That's what we're creating this platform for people to pay tribute. I can guarantee you that Connor Ritchie, who has his hand up, from Lafayette, Louisiana, age 16, I can guarantee you he'll be on November 11th, sharing a story of a World War II veteran. I bet that he's talked with. Huh, Connor?
Ding, ding, ding. Correct.
So who have you talked to recently, Connor? And then before we get back to Kim's story.
I've actually had a conversation with Mr. Harry Miller several months ago, and he's gave me some interesting history about his service and so forth. I mean, he lied. It starts when he lied about his age at 15 to join the tank battalion, the National Guard. And at 16, at my age, has to go through 3 different battles, like the Battle of the Bulge, first off, when most of the guys, especially the airborne guys, both the 82nd and the 101st, didn't have any warm clothing, didn't have any equipment or anything. Just like the similar experience that Mr. Martin went through in Bastogne. And that's how he was very associated with Jumpy Gavin, because his battalion was attached to his division. And he said that Gavin wrote a letter to his battalion saying that they were the best successful battalion that they ever worked with. And during Korea, he ends up working for General MacArthur in the Korean War, which he hated, didn't really care for him at all. And then in Vietnam, he goes to the Air Force because the security agency turned out to be a problem because the officers did not show maturity. They were getting the fights and all that. So that's why he joined. That's why he got out of the security agency and went to the Air Force for communications. And he's one of the veterans that he expressed admiration with several famous officers like General LeMay, who's one of the generals that he worked with in the Air Force. And honestly, I had several veterans who had expressed admiration with their officers, especially they were West Point graduates. Many of Mr. Martin's officers were West Point graduates. Some of them were killed. At least a couple of them were killed in action, like the platoon leader and the battalion commander. And I know the regimental commander was a West Point graduate, Colonel Sink. I know General Taylor was a West Point graduate. And matter of fact, he got to have a relationship with Taylor when Taylor was superintendent of West Point, and got to be close friends with General Kennard as well. So I have veterans who express admiration, and that warms my heart always. And November 11th would have been my great-grandfather's birthday. My great-grandfather's been passed away 16 years ago. He would have turned 103. 103 would have been his age.
103
So,
on November 11th. How
and
great.
he and his dad shared the same birthday, and his dad would be 140 something years old now. But my great grandfather had a very, very good life. Most of his siblings had a good life. They moved around. Once after the war ended, they never really talked about it. They just they were forced to suck it up and work on their jobs.
Yeah.
They were too busy. They feel like they were too busy to talk about it. See?
Yeah, and they should have. And I mean, I would have loved to have read books if they had written a version of Calmed or, Lessons from Thor from 75 years ago. That would have been fascinating. Thank you very much, Connor, for joining us and sharing some of that. Harry Miller, one of the all-time great storytellers who joined the Army at age 16. Kim DeFiori, let me ask you, could you share with us what your deployment in Afghanistan was like? What was your day-to-day duty?
Yeah, so I was an XO of a military police company. So we were there from 2010 to 2011. And so that's kind of like where we surged in Afghanistan. So we had a ton of boots on the ground. And we owned Gardez, which is in East Afghanistan. And so we owned the town of Gardez, so we had to do security operations there, just keeping the roadways open. And then all logistics fell on me as XO. So I just get whatever. We're at 11 different police stations across Afghanistan, all of our squads. We were just mentoring and living on the police stations with them. And so we need to beef up their police stations so during fighting season and try to make it as secure as possible. And then at night, we had a lot of Taliban in our area because Gardez is a semi-large city for Afghanistan. And so I would just do joint operations with SF units, jumping on helicopters and going to capture or kill whatever Taliban was on the agenda that night. And so a lot of missions with police, logistics, and then just trying to capture what Taliban we could in the area.
Can I ask you, you have this warrior spirit that took you to West Point and that took you to war. When you landed on the ground and you started experiencing war for the first time, was it what you thought it would be, or was it different, or how was it different?
I think there was a mix of it's what I thought it would be and it wasn't, because like it snows where we were in Afghanistan, so you get a lot of snow and there's just not much that happens. So there's a lot of boredom and just like there's still logistical operations to go on, but like trying to keep that many soldiers when there's like 6 feet of snow on the ground out of trouble. And like there's nothing to do in Gardez. So it's just like, I don't know, but 20-year-old people will get in trouble no matter where they're at. That's true.
So you're MP, so you actually have to also police on the base?
We don't. No, we don't do any policing. That's all up to unit commanders and leaderships. But yeah, and then like in the summer months and then the spring and everything, that's exactly what I thought it was going to be. Like just nonstop operations, trying to figure out like what happens when a truck gets blown in half. Like how do you take it off the battlefield? How do you get a new truck? Stuff like that. And like just things that you expect from a war of like, all right, how do we resupply ammunition? How do we know when like RPG or whatever, how do we call in close air support, things like that. We figured all that stuff out, and that's kind of what I thought war was. And then the winter months came and so much snow, I was like, this is insane.
You have another quotation that I thought was very telling. You said something like that you went to Afghanistan thinking that you were fighting for your country, and after you were there a while, you realized that wasn't quite true.
Yeah, I think we all saw it when Afghanistan fell. Like as soon as we got there, within the first like 60 days, our Afghan police chief, he like planned an IED attack on us because he didn't want to go on the mission. So just at that level of corruption, because he was like a 2-star general in the police force, if you have that level of corruption, there's no hope for this country.
No hope. Right.
And it's not like a disaster thing. Like Afghanistan's going to be okay. Like they've been a country for however long, longer than us. But but at the time we're just like, what are we doing here? And so it's like there's so much corruption. We have to hide our missions from the Afghans. Like I don't understand. Like they seem like they have about a fifth grader mentality most of the time, even though I know they're intelligent people, but they just want to play unintelligent to us and not able to pick up on what we're trying to get them to do. And like it was just a disaster. And so it was just like, all right, we'll do the best we can with the police and like trying to build their country and trying to build the police force and making sure they had a fair election, even though that's not what they want at all. So we just did what we had to, but like the most important mission was getting all my guys and gals home. That was number one. As soon as like after that police general blew us up and almost killed our guys, like rule number one was bring our guys home.
How did you didn't come straight home, I don't think, from Afghanistan. You went then on a deployment to Germany, correct?
Well, I was deployed to Germany already. So or I guess in the Army it's stationed, but I was already in Germany. And so I was living there. And then I lived there until like 6 more months afterwards.
Okay, after. And how did that, was it a year, 12 months, or was it 15 months in Afghanistan?
It's 12 months. Yeah.
12 months. How did that change you? Can you summarize how the impact that year had on you?
It was like about month 9 when just like the corruption got to me. And like just all of our efforts and money and time, and like I'm taking a year out of my life. And this was what everything since I was like saw the towers fall to being graduate of West Point and then going to fight this war. Like it was this idealistic mindset and it just crumbled over that time. And so about month 9 when I just I lost quite a bit of empathy for the Afghans, and it was the darkest point of my life. And I never want to have that disregard for human life ever again. But I know I got there, and I hate that person. Like, it was just like, that was like the breaking point of like, let's just get our guys home. I don't care what it takes. Like, it was just like, all right, like screw the Afghans. If they don't want to take care of their country, let them do whatever. Let's just make sure we do what we need to get people home so they can see their kids, their husband, wives, or whoever they have at home. But it definitely, like, that darkness, I think, is inside of everyone. And it made me more empathetic in the future, because I was like, even the people that like are on drugs or like dealing with stuff, like they weren't bad babies. They weren't bad kids. And so it helps me connect with people in a deeper way, because like I never see a person just for the indiscretions they have. I always see it as a hurt individual, and chances are it happened in childhood or something, and that has followed them through adulthood. And yeah, we are responsible for our decisions, but at the same time, you only can put people through so much before they find a coping mechanism. And if that coping mechanism works, they're going to keep leaning on it.
Right, right. Creative adaptation, in a sense, which could become a problem. But you said earlier tonight that you're kind of, you disintegrated, your kind of sense of self disintegrated. And you explained it so well just now that part of that was the disillusionment over the war, over what you were sent to do in Afghanistan. A big part of yourself, you lost a part of yourself there. I would imagine being a victim of sexual assault by one of your own, by somebody in uniform, in the United States military uniform, is another disillusionment or another thing that that caused you to lose faith. I don't want you to go into the details of that event, but that was another thing that really shook you to the core.
Yeah. That spiraled me to the worst depression in my life. Like, I was redeployed, and then all this bad stuff happens as soon as I redeploy. And within 60 days, I'm just like, I have a French word, shit sandwich. Like, I've dealt that, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, I have all this crap going on, and I was taught since I was 18 how to go to war, and I know how to go to war, and I know exactly what to do, and I know how to figure that things out, but no one told me when you start breaking inside what to do. And like when it starts crumbling, what do you do to pick the pieces up? And is it okay to feel this way? And everything that was told to us in the Army was no, it wasn't, because you're going to be kicked out. You're going to be retired. You're going to be sent to a transition unit. You're going to be labeled as a crazy person. And like, could I ever even go to a class reunion again? Like, I couldn't show my face if I was labeled the crazy West Pointer. Like, that would be, so it was all these like mental health stigma mixed with like, I don't know the steps because they never were told to me. And so we did a phenomenal job training for war, but coming back from war and like being realistic with females of what happens in the military, because no matter what, like the high percentage of sexual assaults are going to happen in the military. And so we just need to face it for what it is and teach people how to handle the emotions of that. Not saying like prevention isn't key, but realizing that prevention is going to take time, but recovery should be a very big priority right now as well. But
I don't want to,
yeah,
I don't want to be melodramatic, but there's a point in the book where you talk about, it's horrible, where you talk about taking a Colt 45 and putting it at your head. It's unloaded, but you were kind of practicing. You were practicing. You were getting ready to, exit out. What prevented you from making that final horrible step?
Every single time, because I had about 5 suicide attempts. It was my dog Yardım, and I talk about him in my book. But his name Yardım is Turkish for rescue, and I never realized how symbolic that would be throughout my life. But he's still alive. He's not on the cover, but that Thor's my service dog. That's the other dog in my life. But every time he would just come over to me and connect. And like throughout the book, I talk about mental health and different wellness lessons people can take that really help me set boundaries in life and regain my confidence and energy back in life. But like the dogs, like they just play such an integral role of that connection. And just like, it literally takes like, cause your body doesn't want to die. So like when like I'm in an active suicide attempt, it's like my body's looking for anything to survive. So literally like a text message from a friend, even if we think nothing of it, like it can pull someone from suicide. And I've heard this happen so many times. And that's why I always say people like call your friends, text your friends, do whatever you have to, because you don't know what space they're in, especially after COVID. Like everyone's in a rough space or still in COVID, whatever. But after this like isolation piece, people are struggling with mental health, and like that text, that call, whatever it is, might take them out of that spiral for the night and help them to live a life, go for a walk, or do something else that day.
Somebody said that life is meaningful to the extent that you take responsibility for something. And it's like, you're responsible for Thor. You're responsible for the dog. And the dog is kind of reminding you, in the sense, that's how I think of it. Like, I can't exit out because, I need to be here to take care of the dog. Something little like that, just a little, can make all the difference, huh?
Yeah, and like literally, I lived for my dog Yardım for 3 straight years. That was my primary reason to live, and like my family life wasn't the greatest, so I was like, let me find a solid reason. And dogs, so many times for veterans and first responders and those like crisis type jobs, so many times dogs can just connect and give exactly what that person needs in that moment.
Oh man. Kim, what the heck gives you the courage to talk so frankly about all this stuff?
When I was going through it, anytime someone shared their story, I leaned in. And like sometimes they didn't meet the demographic, so they weren't female, they weren't sexually assaulted, they weren't an officer, or whatever the thing, they weren't a West Point grad. And so I think if we get a high variety of stories told of like it's okay to get help, you're going to connect with various audiences. So like female veterans, there's a high rate of depression, so maybe they'll connect to my story more than they would. Like I love Keith, but maybe Struggle Well isn't for them because it's written by a man. Whereas
Right.
another person, maybe it will connect with them more. So having that variety of stories, and like the first reason to share my story is always for me, because like I want to have the confidence and courage and everything to own my story and say it didn't break me and it never will. But the second reason is to help all those like veterans or non-veterans just know they're not alone. And like, it doesn't matter the size of your trauma. And by the way, there's no measurement of trauma. Like trauma is trauma and depression is depression, even if you don't have a trauma in your past. And it's okay to seek help. There's really good help out there. And like, if nothing else, like I want you here. I hate reading about any suicides.
Wow. Jennifer, can I ask you about your homecoming? What was it like to come back and to try and find Ryan again? And how was he responding to his being wounded?
Wow. Well, that's really hard to follow up with.
I know.
I actually, before I ever even got on the call, I was chatting with my husband, like, dude, talking to my husband, like, Ryan, look at Kim's story, like, holy moly.
I know.
Well, what am I gonna do? And then it reminded me of the things I continue to speak on. Like, so when I have gone, I'll come back to your question. Sorry, Todd. When I have gone out and done book signings or book readings or speaking, and I have shared my story, and veterans will come up to me and they will say, thank you for your service. And I can see their Navy SEAL, Air Force, Army hat, Marine hat. And I say, thank you, or I'll come out first. Typically, like, they've come in front of me and I say, thank you for your service. And they're like, oh, no, I didn't do anything like that. And I say, oh, no, stop right there. And I don't mean to be rude and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I want us to, we're not on a level here. We all signed a certain line to serve. We didn't choose where we were going, where we were placed, what trauma we would have, what trauma we wouldn't have. We didn't choose that, but here we are all right now, right here. And even people that are on this call, like, we're not here to measure our trauma, measure our success, measure what rank, what branch, all of that stuff. We're not here for that. Or your story, or, oh, you were brave and told your story. Oh, you're brave and you speak about that. Like, we're not here to measure that. We're here to put our voice out there and encourage other people that it's okay. Let's get uncomfortable. Let's get comfortable being uncomfortable. Let's take away all those stigmas, all those public stigmas, all of that. You had mentioned when I asked you if I should have something planned, you said, if you want to throw in some pictures. I didn't realize you meant like send you some. I do have like a couple pictures on a slideshow that I could pop up and show you. But let's go back to your question, Todd, because I already forgot it. What was your question?
My question was, it's your whole book. Coming back home, Ryan is severely wounded. He has a very bad facial wound.
Yes, so perfect timing.
Maxilla bone right there, and it's changed him. I mean, he's gone through a lot. You've gone through a lot, and you were determined somehow to reconnect. Yes,
I will. I'll talk more about that. I do have a couple of pictures actually of his facial injury. If you are able to, I tried to share my screen and it said,
okay.
So if you can enable that, but
yes,
I'll talk until you say that. Until you change
You can share it. You can share now.
Okay. So let's see here. Screen. We'll skip past some of these. Some of these are just for recent There. Oh, look at that. Oh,
That's
how
you.
cute. That's totally me.
19 years old.
17 years old, enlisting as a junior in high school, and then deployed 2 years later. I had this ready for another speaking event I did recently, but I wanted to go on and show you how the community of Paris that you were mentioning, you know, if you Google it, it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. The support. Here's my husband. On the left-hand side, there is my boyfriend, Ryan Hobbs. And you know what? I want to go off on a tangent on this point.
I see Gene Klebingot, World War II veteran, just laughing at that picture of Ryan. So thank you. You made his day. Good.
I never had any intentions of my book being a love story. As a matter of fact, when my book coach asked me when we were going certain directions, she was like, "Are you wanting this to be a love story?" And I was like, "No, good God, no." Blech, blech. And then really when it comes down to it, it's just our story and our struggle. And here's what I struggled with the most. As I was writing my book, you would think that the struggles I had the most struggle with was talking about that night with Jessica, but really it was talking about the war at home and how that continues for all of us, how that continues on for our family and our friends. And that transition stinks. And I mentioned before, Todd, on another call that we were on, how I loved the book by Ken Falk and Josh Goldberg, Struggle Well, Thriving in the Aftermath of Trauma. They talk about this second thing right here, warrior reflexes, and how when you are deployed or when you're a soldier, you are trained in warrior reflexes. They're a part of your life. They keep you safe. This is how you live. And then you transition home, and suddenly these warrior reflexes look like PTSD, and they look like they don't fit into society. And that becomes really hard to navigate. But we talked about these stigmas earlier. Actually, Kim had mentioned about it. So there are 3 types of stigmas when you come back and you struggle with them. There's public, like just against the military, the things you do. There's self, like, oh, I didn't do enough. I didn't have this. I didn't write a book, like whatever. And then there's structural, like Kim was talking about, like, because you are in the military, can you talk about that? Or are you going to be frowned upon and looked at as, oh, where were you? Like, what did you do to, like, did he really say that? Oh man, that was the hardest part of my book for sure. So as I go on, actually, for book 2, I want to talk more about that struggle at home, because although Ryan and I, as we came back, it was a hot mess. To answer your question, Todd, it was a hot mess, and we parted ways. We couldn't do it. And then he told me he was having a baby with someone, and then separately we grew and we lived life without each other, and we started to see like what was important in life, and like what to not like keep yourself in this like self prison, this prison of emotions. And the journey just took us to a point where he asked me on a date 5 years later, and here we are, like 8 years later, and I wrote that book. And I hope that it doesn't necessarily, I don't want to say that I hope it doesn't come across as a love story, because it's fine. Like, if people take it, it's fine. But I don't want people to steer clear of it because it's because people say it's a love story, because it's a story of trauma, and it's a story of growth. and it comes from different perspectives. And I really hope to be able to bring out other people's perspectives, their stories. And so I'm actually starting my own podcast in December, which I'm so excited about, because what I really want to do, I want to continue to share my voice, and I'm working on a book. However, I can't write like a million books to follow my crazy brain. That's all of our thoughts. Like, we can't put this all down on paper or publish it. It's just, it ain't going to happen. And so I'm going to start my podcast, and I really want to focus. I want to put my voice out there, but I really want to share the voice of veterans and their family members and the struggles, the triumphs. And so I'm excited to launch that in December.
I want to open it up for questions and comments from the people here on the Zoom side, and certainly on the Facebook or YouTube side, who might want to ask a question or make a comment. Please do. Just feel free to unmute yourself, make the comment, put something in the chat here. I'll be quiet for a little bit, just if anybody wants to unmute themselves. If not, I have a couple questions and comments. Number one, Connor Ritchie, I'm gonna let people know that you sent this message to me, because I think it's important. If you don't mind, Connor messaged me here in the chat, just to me. He said, "Todd, why was that guy flipping people off? That's inappropriate." Connor, Jennifer, how would you explain that? Because that is there's a subtle message, a kind of I see it as a defiance. There he is, damaged, close to death, and yet he's, defying death.
Connor, so I'm glad you asked that question. And I'm going to change it up a little bit, because I just resigned from teaching after 12 years. I resigned from teaching because I'm on a mission. I want to help veterans and their families more. So I got real crazy, real passionate, and I resigned from teaching because I'm on a mission to help veterans. And I want to ask you a question, Connor. Can you unmute yourself real quick? So I have a question for you. And this is what I would ask my students if they weren't, third grade. You're old enough for me to ask you this. Taking a look at that picture, I want to tell you that was a picture of him at 9:00 in the morning the next day. So not even 12 hours after he was hit by a roadside bomb. If you were to make an inference, if you were just to make a guess, like, think about it, what would you think? What do you think is the reason that he threw up that? Because it wasn't toward me. I'll tell you that. It actually goes along with the experience in the last 12 hours.
I'm guessing it's PTSD, to be honest with you. I can relate to post-traumatic stress disorder, because two of my great-great-uncles on my mom's side, my great-grandmother's two brothers, after they came back from the war, they became alcoholics, and they ended up dying at a very early age from alcoholism. And most of my great-grandfather's friends after the war that were veterans of World War II, they never really talked about it, never really talked about the war, because they could see how traumatic war is, and most of them are not even around anymore. Passed away many years ago.
Right. And you know what? And you speaking on that, I really hope that we will all get to a place to where we're not so uncomfortable talking about it, to where some people have support in their life, to where they can ask certain questions that will just open up a conversation. But in that picture, having it only been in like the 12 hours that he was hit by a roadside bomb, by the so-called enemy, flipped the truck, landed on his face, shook his whole life, changed his entire life. My husband now has a bone graft. Like, he takes his teeth out every day. He's had his face rebuilt. And in that moment, in that picture, for my husband, he is a very funny, sarcastic person. And so he handles stress and life's challenges with a sense of humor. And so in that picture, although it's a good Connor, I should ask him, maybe it came from somewhere else, but I pretty much know that it came from the place of that was his response to being blown up, having his face crushed, and just being rocked in his world, being rocked. That was a really, really good question, though, Connor.
Yes, thank you, Connor, and thank you, Jennifer, for the answer. And before I go to Henry Shepke, I do want to say, I don't know if all of you are aware of this, you veterans know this, but there's a tradition in the military of using a lot of obscenities. I don't know if that's anything you ever experienced. There's a lot of 4-letter words thrown around, pass the effing butter, And I remember, I swear, Leo, you told me that you went on to be, after you got out of the Army, you went on to become, wanted to become a teacher, but you thought you had to kind of learn how to talk again, right? Is that what you said? You had to learn to talk without using obscenities so that you could be appropriate in the classroom. That's just kind of how you talk in the military. Something about that culture. And before I go to Henry, I do want to say one thing. I see Julia Parsons here. Julia, we had an event with a nonprofit organization this morning, Rebuilding Together Pittsburgh. It was wonderful with the staff, and Julia was a part of it. Ben Wright was a part of it, talking about what it means to be a veteran. Julia, I heard from somebody, Mary Klepper, who is on the Zoom call tonight. She said that the state of Massachusetts has a state heroine, a hero, a female hero. And she thinks Pennsylvania should have one. She wants to nominate you, Julia, to be Pennsylvania's state of heroine. Julia Parsons is a Navy wave, 100 years old. She was a code breaker in World War II. And I think we should start a petition, Julia. We can't hear you. I think it has to do with your earphones or something like that. But I think that should be something we should start here, is have Julia Parsons be named the Pennsylvania state heroine. Although that sounds too much like the drug.
I like it, Todd.
Yeah. What do you think?
I like it. I'm just a Maryland girl, so somebody from Pennsylvania going to have to get on that.
Okay.
I'll help though.
Thank you, Mary, for that idea. I love that idea. Henry Shepke from Madison, 13 years old. How are you, Henry?
I'm doing good.
What's going on? I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to add something. Connor was talking about veterans not wanting to share their stories and from PTSD and stuff like that. And something that I really found interesting is that I talk with a lot of veterans, World War II veterans, through the mail and stuff. And a lot of them seem to be a lot more open to talking with me because I'm young, and also, through the mail as opposed to in person. And I thought I'd add that because I thought it was really interesting. They seem to be a lot more open to talking about some of their experiences and some of the stuff they went through during the war.
Absolutely. Yes, it is this special, and that's, one of the reasons I love you and I love Connor, but one of the reasons why I really love when you're on our program is I think it elevates what we do. There's a sense I think people like to know that young people are listening, especially because after we're gone, you'll still have the stories to pass on. And I think that really means a lot to our veterans and means a lot to all of us. So as you can see, Henry and Connor, not many young people are here with us tonight on the Zoom side, but you are. And so you're kind of taking on the burden of hearing these stories, learning from them and passing them on. And that's such an important role. We just don't have a culture without those people stepping up and doing what you're doing, taking the time, you have better things to do. In a sense, you're young. You should be out there, raising hell somewhere, but you're here, hearing these stories. And it's so great to have you with us. And I also think that as you age, and I'm 55 years old, so I've noticed this in myself, you do start you finally feel like you've filled up with enough knowledge and wisdom in life that you want to start passing it along. But I think that happens to veterans earlier. And I think that's why Kim and Jennifer, and I was so interested to have them on. They're so young, and yet they've accumulated such wisdom and can share it so eloquently. You're kind of old beyond your years. And I found that often in veterans, Jennifer and Kim. I don't know if you have anything to say to that, but I see we're almost at the end of our program. The other point I was going to make, maybe even make it in the form of a question. Does it matter that you're women? When I asked you on the program, I didn't immediately think of this being a women's veteran program, but as you've talked, I've realized it's hard for me to picture men writing the books that you've written, at least the way that you have. Am I off base?
Actually, I'm going to jump in there. That's a good question. And until you've asked that, I did not think about it, but immediately, like, I'm pretty straightforward. And you saying that makes me think of, actually, it comes to those stigmas. It's those structural stigmas. If men were to step out there and put not if they were, because some people do.
Yes.
But it's uncomfortable.
Yes.
You have to go to a place where people are going to judge you. All that fear is going to come in. And I feel like that judgment is more fierce in the male gender.
Yes.
Or maybe just like the world, like the stigmas of gender, like, oh, wow, we see men as like strong, powerful. You can't get vulnerable. And I disagree.
Right. And okay, Kim, do you have anything to share on that score?
I would just say it does matter because I'm very athletic looking, so I don't get questioned as much. But there's quite a few of my female veterans that get asked where their husband served and things like that, or they'll park in a veteran space and someone will come chew them out thinking they're not veterans. And just putting a face to the female veteran experience is very important, and getting stories of female veterans out there so we don't always assume a male gender to that experience, and open up the eyes to that female veterans are veterans. They're not at the VA as a spouse. They're not parking in these spots. I don't know why people throw a fit about a veteran spot, but they do. And it's very, very hurtful to that female veteran for a very long time. And we just need to make sure that we acknowledge their service as much as we acknowledge our male veterans as well.
Jennifer tells a story of wanting to get off work or needing to get off work because of your National Guard commitment. And I think it was your boss said something like, what, you're in the National Guard? And you said, yeah. And he said, well, they need somebody to file the papers. Right?
Yep, absolutely. That's Todd. Thank you. Thank you for reading my book. Thank you for taking that in and bringing that up. That's absolutely right. And you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and be completely blunt, be totally open. That was at Hooters. Okay. So I'm open. I'm authentic. That was at Hooters. Like when I came back from drill, a friend of mine, as I was moving to go to college in a certain city, a friend of mine was like, hey, I can get you a job. And she got me a job there, and I totally sucked. But when that happened, when I was calling off work, I had already put in that I needed those days off, and that little turd burglar put me on the schedule. And I looked at him and I said, no, hey, no. This is that weekend I told you I have drill weekend, since I'm just that National Guard. There's one of those like public stigmas, like, oh, you're just National Guard. And I said, I have drill. And he was like, drill for what? I said, remember, I'm in the National Guard. This is way before I went to Iraq. Not way, but it was before I went to Iraq. And he looked at me and he said, oh, somebody's got to do the paperwork.
Michael Watton put here in the chat, the book, The Unwomanly Face of War, deals with World War II Russian women who fought. Their voice is significantly different, he says. And Connor, you're holding up a book, it looks like.
That's one of my close friends. He actually wrote a book several years ago. That's one of the reasons how I can relate to PTSD, because Jack Gubman says his name on there. He joined the Navy at 17 years old to join the medical corps, and he became a medical corpsman. And his first operation was at the D-Day invasion. He sees many people get drowned, many people get killed, many people get ripped up by shrapnel, and sees the same thing in Okinawa. There's two things that he sees. He witnesses a kamikaze plane. Kamikaze pilot kills himself and then hits the Mexico and then kills the captain and kills 80 men on that ship, and sees General Buckner get shot by the Japanese. So he's had PTSD for 66 years. PTSD has wasted 66 years of his life by drinking, smoking, you name it. And that's how I can also relate to PTSD. PTSD is a waste of our resources, and so is war. And the waste of our resources is people's lives. War is a terrible thing, but somebody got to do it.
May I mention something on that? No.
Sure.
Connor, have you ever heard of the term post-traumatic growth?
No, I have not.
So I'm 37,000 years old, only 37, but I heard about it last summer. And I want you to look into that, because PTSD is something that unfortunately probably won't ever go away. Like, it's always there. It's hidden in the background, even if it doesn't show its ugly face. And like, as you identify it, if you number one, identify it right there, that's growth. And then if you decide to acknowledge it and work toward anything, like, oh, I'm going to do this, oh, I'm going to acknowledge it, that's all growth right there. So I'm going to stop right there and not go too much into that, but you should look into that. Post-traumatic growth.
And, I'm sorry, Kim said you gain energy from failure. The warrior spirit is the one that and that's, the analogy also is, I think you could only really grow from hurt, from some kind of, pain. I don't want to necessarily use the word trauma, but some kind of pain. That's how you grow. You grow. That's kind of the human condition, is we grow and we learn through our failures and through our difficulties, through our struggles. And that you were both able to write about it in such a powerful way makes me very grateful to you. And thank you for spending an evening with us, sharing your stories. I hope you'll come back again, certainly when you have the new book out. And if some people may have been watching close enough on Zoom where we actually caught a glimpse of Thor. We didn't even get to talk about Thor. There he is. Oh my gosh, what a wonderful dog. Hello, Thor. What a cutie. How is Thor reacting to his celebrity?
He's got a big head, as you can tell.
Yeah, it's all gone to his head.
Some people bring some dog treats to book signings, so it's pretty fun.
Thank you so much, Thor. And thank you, Kim. And thank you, Jennifer. And thanks to all of you who joined us here on the Zoom side and who are watching on social media. This was a memorable conversation. And I think it filled the bill of inspiration really well. Please do join us next week when Scott Masters brings on 4 Canadian World War II veterans. And then, of course, later next week, we'll have our Veterans Day Vetathon. Thank you again, Kim. Thank you, Jennifer. Take care, everyone. Happy All Saints